I just have to do this. This is part of the program because it helps me when I edit the video later. I just sit here for a little bit too long and stare into the camera, and it's going to creep you out. It's going to creep you out. I have no control over that, but it's necessary. So tonight, on a very special Thursday edition of Public Access Live, my guest was no bush. He was no tree in the theater world. He was the lead. This is a writer, a developer, probably one of the most gifted people I've ever heard at a pitch meeting. Tonight's guest is none other than Quinn Blakely, and that episode begins in 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Public Access Live, your window through my window. My guest tonight is none other than playwright, scholar, professor of... I almost got that out. Come on. Quinn Blakely is here tonight. Hello. And he's a better writer than I can do on the fly, obviously. Theater.
I'm just laughing at the fact you called me a professor.
You know, when I knew I wasn't... I believe it was Steve Martin that said, I never knew how bad I wanted to be a stand-up comedian until I met someone who wanted it worse. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So whenever I first met you at that pitch meeting at the Corner Cafe,
oh yeah,
it was like, this guy wants it.
Yeah,
I mean, you had... Oh, you don't like that idea? Okay, I just have 75 more that we can go through. Like, it was pitch after pitch. Landry only let us pitch one a week.
Right, yeah. He didn't give me any kind of preface about how many pitches I should give. So I came in with, I think I had 20 pitches on the paper. I think I only mentioned 5 or 6, maybe 7.
Before you could feel the hatred from the other people in the room.
Before I realized that I'd overstayed my welcome.
It was amazing. And all the ideas are pretty fresh, too. Because in the comedy scene, if you have comedy friends on your Facebook and something happens in the news, like, say, I don't know, Nancy Pelosi wants to impeach Trump, for instance. Then you've got, if you have 50 comedy friends in your Facebook feed, you're going to get 50 hot takes that day.
Right, yeah.
And they regurgitate the same joke over and over again. And it was like, because I was in that pocket of people.
Right.
And then you came in, it was like, hey, I've got ideas from the outside, people. And it was like, wow! Oh, it was amazing. What got you, where was your first experience interacting with an audience? Theater?
Yeah. I grew up in a theater family. My dad's a
We're not talking about your father.
Okay.
This isn't about him.
I grew up in a theater family.
No, go on. I told you that. But you can talk about your father proudly if you'd like.
Well, I mean, I am proud of my father. The thing that I realized as I was growing up in theater is that a lot of people knew my father. And we used to live in North Carolina, and everyone in the North Carolina theater community knew my dad. Because my dad had, that's where he kind of got his start. All the early stuff he did was there after college, of course, because he went to OU. But, I mean, that's kind of where he started being more professional in terms of his theater, like becoming a theater professor and basically running a theater in North Carolina. And then we came back to Tulsa, and all of the people who knew him when he was a teenager were like, oh, yeah, we know that guy. And you're his son?
Did it help you learn, like, every job in the theater having... Because, I mean, some guys start pushing a broom, some guys start on stage, but
right.
if you have someone that's a playwright in the family, you know everything from set design to, I mean, you know all the jobs, right?
Right. There's a few that I don't know. I know a lot about acting, I know a lot about directing, I know a lot about writing. I don't know very much about lighting design, which is weird because my dad is an expert lighting designer.
I've had to learn.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
like,
yeah.
You don't know until you get into it. Like, why is this funny? Oh, because you're casting a shadow behind. Oh,
right, yeah. It's very interesting because the way that theater, especially like theater lighting, is set up. It's because whenever you think about, all you have to do is shine a light on someone just to make sure everyone can see you, and that's all you have to do a show. But it's so much more complicated than that because if you light something incorrectly, I've seen.
Changes the mood.
Yeah, I've seen 2 of the same show, one with excellent lighting, one with very bad lighting, and it's 2 different shows.
What's the easiest lighting job? What is the equivalent to you're playing the tree? in the lighting department? Is it the guy who runs the spotlight? Because basically he just has to follow one.
Oh yeah.
Like, hey, give that to the tree.
I mean, it's not to be scoffed at, but it is a lot easier than having to get, because every time you have to redesign lights, you basically have to get up onto a ladder into the grid, which is like a series of like metal pipes that run across the ceiling, and you have to like move them or move giant lights around from
big
place to place.
canisters and things.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's wild.
Does that give you like a certain amount of confidence being able to? We refer to people on this show as either the lead or the understudy or the tree. You know?
Right.
Can you tell when you see someone who isn't really, you're like, that person's playing the shepherd. They're getting no lines.
Right.
Have you ever seen anybody evolve out of that and be and want it so bad that they're like, hey, the next time you saw them, they had grown a personality or something to be effective. Are characters needed in the theater, or is it is it a prerequisite?
Well,
is it imperative, or can you be a good theater actor and not be a character, not have a big bold personality?
I think that you can, and there's a couple stories that I can tell that can kind of reference that. When I was very young, I did a theater camp in which I had already kind of been doing youth theater for a while, and I kind of knew the ins and outs. This is I think the 4th or 5th time I'd been to this theater camp, and I'd done a couple shows here in Tulsa. And there was this kid who showed up who was, I gotta say, he was 8. And I'm maybe 11 or 12. So I'm kind of trying to take this kid under my wing, but he doesn't want to be taken under anyone's wing, right? He wants to be independent. He wants to be his own man. He's his own boy. He's an 8-year-old. But he has
a confidence, though.
He has confidence, but he can't act at all. I mean, it's just every time he gets up on stage, he's got this thick North Carolina accent, and he was cast as we were doing a play about bugs, and we were both cast as cockroaches, and he was and at one point he gets stepped on, and so he gets stepped on, and then they had this big giant flat printed out life-size version of him that I had to pick up off the stage because he was squashed flat, and then we would shake it out off stage, and he would fly back onto the stage, and he was supposed to look like he'd been stepped on, like he was all disheveled, but he just kind of went whoa and moved his head around in a circle, and I remember being like, wow, this guy is so confident, but he has like almost no chops at all.
Are there certain moves that you learn in theater? Or like in Magic, there's like 7 sleight of hand moves.
Yeah.
Is it kind of the same? Is there like
there's a couple. I mean, every actor has a different kind of. It's a bag of tricks.
Right.
Much like a magician, every actor has their different bag of tricks, and I personally I mean, everyone has to learn to cheat out to the audience. Everyone has to learn to cross the stage, find their light, things like that.
Yeah.
Things that will just, if you pay attention to those basic things, will make you a better actor. But one of my favorites in terms of like tricks that I use as an actor, and I do this in improv, I do this in theater, I do this in comedy, which is the quick turn to the audience.
Oh yeah.
Because if at any point you're faced away from the audience, and I love to do this on an entrance. I was in a show one time that my friend Jack Allen did. And Jack, wonderful man. And I think we opened a door, and I'm standing facing away from the well, every time we did it before, we opened the door, and I'd be standing there in the doorway looking out at the audience, and I was like, wouldn't it be funnier if I was looking away, if this guy who I was playing came up, knocked on the door, and then immediately turned his back to the door. Just the idea of doing that and then opening the door and me turning to the audience dramatically, and wouldn't that be funnier? And we did it a couple times, and it stuck, and that's the way we did it from then on. Do you find that like on small level productions are kind of going overboard now? Like on, let's say, a school level where all the kids are mic'd. Yes.
And the production quality. If you're an elementary school theater class and your production level is higher than 1970s Doctor Who,
it's too much. It's too much. Go back to the styrofoam and tinfoil. You know what I mean? Like what?
There's a nobility to styrofoam and tinfoil, you know? It's the kind of do-it-yourself attitude that is just fantastic.
This is a school play that a friend of mine was in when he was in junior high. He went to Wilson Junior High. This is Loft in Space and the Mortgages Due, or Revenge on the Launching Pad. It's a lovely melodrama about Space Cadet Bob of the 21st century.
Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing.
And his who was is it what's the other guy? Cast of characters. Is Grandma Humble? No. Space Cadet Bob. Where's the bad guy? What's the bad guy's name? Because he has a great one. Oh, there's a guy in here named Fairly Dim. I like that one. Space Cadet. I'm a pickle. You're a pickle. First space troop. Second space trooper. Commander.
I'm a pickle.
Oh, Snidely Backlash.
Snidely Backlash.
Yes. This. Would you like to read?
Oh, absolutely.
Would you like to? The only other person to read out of that book is Bedgood, and he did.
Oh my!
And he did some character.
Bedgood did this.
Oh, well, he read something out of it.
Oh my!
No, as an expert on this, as an excerpt on this show, he wrote it.
Man.
He read it. He did a reading from
Loft
in Space and the Mortgages Due. This is definitely one of those. Pay the rent. I can't pay the rent. It's one of those.
All right, I'll read this line by Bob. Bob says this to audience. It says.
Okay.
She appears to be a sympathetic female with an interest in scientific matters. Obviously a girl of the 25th century. I may flatter myself, but I think she finds me reasonably attractive. After the way Rosa Budd turned on the frost machine, I could do with a boost of the male ego. God, that's fucking fantastic.
You want to take it with you?
Oh, absolutely. This is by Tim Kelly. Yeah. I know Tim Kelly. Tim Kelly wrote Curse of the Werewolf.
Okay.
Which is another... I can bring you a copy of Curse of the Werewolf, which is fucking excellent.
I'd love to. I have a thing for just really eclectic literature, and for some reason, whenever... that was my mom's best friend's son who passed away 20 years ago, and part of his effects were that... Does anybody want this book? And I was like, I would love to have that book, please. Because I went to that show. I was sat in the audience when he performed that.
Really?
Yes.
Did he play Troopers? Because Troopers
he was.
Is circled in here. That's wonderful.
Isn't that amazing?
I love collecting old scripts.
Is high school theater this elementary these days?
No. High school theater, more... Okay, I will say I went to a high school with... and I want to be careful when I say this.
Sure. Measure your words.
I hated the theater teacher at my high school.
Fair enough.
I don't think I hated him as a person, but I definitely hated the way that he...
Was he that David Blakely guy?
No, he was not that David... And I think here's the thing. I think I was spoiled by David Blakely, because that David Blakely guy is nothing but professional.
Did he have a higher standard for his children?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
I mean, he wanted us... Because my dad, especially whenever we were doing performances and things, he always wanted to make sure that we were... doing the best that we could, you know? Mm-hmm. And that's not to say that he was like, hitting us with a belt every time we did a bad performance. But he just wanted to make sure that we were doing our best. And he didn't want us to slack off, is what he was saying, you know? And so, he would always be like, hey, you learning your lines for your show? Hey, you doing this? And he would help us run our lines and stuff like that. And, like, whenever we would go to auditions, he'd have us run the auditions with him beforehand, whether it was a musical audition or a cold read. Cold read is one of my favorite theater lingo words, which is where you go into an audition with no idea what the material is, and you have to read from the script without any preparation at all. You read cold, and it's I love it. I love cold reading because I'm an improv guy, so I always. And I'm a decent reader. I'm not a speed reader like other people that I know. But I don't generally like stumble over words and stuff. So it's easy for me. It's different because my brother has dyslexia, so he was always really nervous about cold reading. Okay. And so whenever he always wanted to practice this stuff, and every time Dad would be like, "Hey, you want to practice the audition?" I'd be like, "Oh, come on, I was just." Let me watch my show, I'm watching TV, Dad. No, but this high school theater teacher, we did a production of Macbeth, the Scottish play.
The Scottish play.
One of my favorite Shakespeare plays. I've got a tiered list of my favorite Shakespeare plays.
Okay. The only thing I like about Macbeth was Fry and Laurie's bit about the Scottish play.
Yeah. Macbeth is, I think, one of the most violent. I think other than perhaps Timon of Athens. I don't know how to pronounce a lot of these character names that Shakespeare wrote about, but it's one of the most violent. And so we're doing the Scottish play, and every time we would start rehearsal, he'd be like, "All right, guys, why don't you go ahead and start rehearsal? Bye." And then he'd leave, and we'd have to rehearse by ourselves,
Sounds
basically.
Like Bedgood's comedy class.
It just always... growing up in a theater family, to have the director of a show not be present during a rehearsal
seems a little
is crazy, you know.
Lord of the Flies.
Yeah, it really was. There was a point where a chair fell off of a platform, a 10-foot platform.
Fell. It almost took out the lead.
Well, it fell onto a student. Yeah, and I went to the administration. I was like, "Hey,
we're not being supervised.
This is totally unsupervised, totally dangerous." And they were like, whatever, it's theater, you know.
You guys are lucky we don't cancel.
Right, yeah.
Is there an emotion on stage that you prefer to convey? Do you like to do comedies or drama? Or?
I like to think that I am a dramatic actor, but I really excel in the comedy. You know,
Can you do drama without tinging it without? Can you do a dramatic role without overplaying it to the point where people laugh?
Well, I wasn't sure about that until pretty recently. I did a show. Actually, I was in a show that my dad wrote called Four Ways. It was called Four Ways to Die. Now it's called The Deaths of Sybil Bolton. It's the same story that the new Martin Scorsese movie that he's filming in Oklahoma.
Okay.
Killers of the Flower Moon. It's about the Osage reign of terror in the 1920s, about the Osage millionaires who were murdered for their oil head rights.
I've read that book.
Yeah, it's fascinating. My dad wrote
the Osage murders.
Yeah, my dad wrote a play based on a different book by a specific guy.
Okay.
Who he now knows and is friends with, and it's a fascinating story about how this guy discovered that his grandmother was one of these people that was murdered.
Okay.
You know, and he's kind of trying to figure out who murdered her. It's a murder mystery, sort of. But in the show, I play 4 different characters. I play a undertaker, I play a priest, I play a salesman, and I play the guy who murdered his grandmother. And those first 3 characters are kind of a little silly. They're kind of played a little over the top, and so whenever I was reading those roles, I was like, I can do this fine, you know. But when it came to the murderer, because the murderer, his name's Burkhardt. Spoiler alert. His name's Burkhardt.
If you haven't read the book from the 1920s,
if you haven't read this, yeah,
I don't want to spoil it for you.
But
Indians die.
Yeah. He starts out as kind of this jovial cowboy. You know, he's talking about how he's like, "Oh yeah, howdy, how do you do?" And he kind of tells some like fun stories, and then finally someone just asks, "Did you kill her?" And then he has to the character makes this really abrupt turn where he suddenly gets really dark. And I was not sure if I could do that, because every other dramatic role that I've played, I've done some Shakespeare stuff that's dramatic, and every time I would have to take about 5 or 10 minutes off stage just prepping for that, just like sweating and like, you know, like Rocky punching big slabs of meat, just getting ready, because it's exhausting. Dramatic acting is way more exhausting than comedic acting.
Is the audience like, would you not want to invite people that see you in Talk Show Inc.? Would you not want to invite those same people to do this, just in case they think it's irony in some way and laugh in the middle of a part that's not supposed to be laughed at? Like, no, we're not doing that tonight.
Right, and I'm always afraid of that, because I do so much stuff with comedians and in the comedy world.
Right.
That I've always felt a little like there's almost like a wall between those two worlds. I'd love to tear down that wall. I'd love to have people like you and people like Landry come and see me doing my dramatic work.
Yeah.
I'm just really nervous about it, you know.
I understand. Do you think acting is normal?
Oh God, no, not at all. It's not. I mean, it's normal.
What do you say? What do you say to people who look at actors and go, "Oh, I think they're the coolest. Or that person's down to earth." And it's like, it's not normal to be able to cry on command, right?
Right.
You guys know that, right?
Right.
So
Yeah. And I.
I mean, it's a special skill, but
Right.
that's not normal.
Stanislavski, and I'm going to go into some theory here
Go
for
on.
a second. Stanislavski, an old Russian man who kind of pioneered the the world of acting. Before Stanislavski, acting was all very presentational. Everyone was like, to be or not to be, that is the question. Everyone would almost talk directly to the audience,
It wasn't
right?
acting, it was overacting.
It was overacting, yes.
Right.
And then Stanislavski's like, why are we overacting? Why isn't this real, Why is it that whenever I go and see Romeo and Juliet die, that I don't feel like they're actually dying, He was thinking about this stuff, and so he was an actor. He kind of had previously subscribed to this idea of overacting. And so then one day Stanislavski goes out into the streets, dressed as an old beggar woman, and just spends the entire day begging for change as an old beggar woman in character, which is the craziest thing ever. Is just absolutely ridiculous.
Character actors got their methods, man.
Exactly,
But
yeah.
Come on,
Well,
that's crazy.
That he did that, and he was like, "Wow, there must be some kind of method to this." And then he pioneered method acting. Yeah.
Oh, he's that guy.
He was the beginning of method acting. Just by and he eventually, the Actors Studio in New York took a lot from the Stanislavski method, and Stanislavski continued to work with people into because I think this was maybe the 1890s, or maybe it's before that. Whenever he's doing beginning as an actor, and so this same Stanislavski method is directly linked to people like Marlon Brando and Marilyn Monroe is an Actors Studio actor. So it's directly affecting the actors who have kind of built Hollywood, built the idea of the megastar actor, right? So it's not normal at all to act. The whole idea of theater, I think, is relatively normal because in society you always want to tell stories, but it's just a matter of who's telling those stories. And even back in the times of the Odyssey and the Iliad, these are just things that stories that people would memorize and then tell at big parties, and
They were legend.
yeah, it's legendary, these kind of stories, and the people who told the stories. It's Homer who did the Iliad.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if it's the Odyssey or the Iliad, but it's one of these where he would just go from town to town to big gatherings of people, big parties, just to tell this one story, And it's a fantastic story. It's a huge story. It would take all night to tell the story, and then at the end of the story, everyone would be like, "All right, good night, time to go to sleep."
Yeah, it was basically like Big Bad John.
I don't know who that is.
That's a song.
Oh, okay.
It was a song, Big Bad John. It was just this legend of a guy who worked in a mine.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that he saved all these miners by holding when the mine collapsed and took his life and everything. But if you think about it, that was how Norse legends were made. Were just these songs about heroes. And if you look at Big Bad John, yeah, that's funny. But that's kind of how most of these people made their, that's how they got their clout back in the day. Was they made a song about them. Where do you find the most pressure in live production is? Do you think it's on the staff to make sure everything that the world that the actors live in is absolutely perfect? Do you think it's the lines having to be memorized, or do you think that it's only one take, that you don't get any edits, you don't get any redo? Where is the pressure in theater? Who has the most on them?
I think... Well, there's a lot of different pressure coming from different angles. Like, you have to memorize your lines. If you don't memorize... Because not memorizing your lines isn't just bad for you. If you don't know your lines, it's bad for everyone.
Yeah, the timing, the rhythm of the scene's off.
Everything is totally screwed up.
Yeah.
I think that the most pressure really is on post-mistake. Because when an actor's on stage, an actor makes a mistake.
That's a good point.
Post-mistake. Once you've made a mistake...
The recovery.
That's whenever you're in the... That's what I think is the red. That's the red zone right there. Because if you go along, you make a mistake, and you recover from it, you're fine. But right after you've made that mistake, sometimes it's a mistake that the audience won't even notice. It might be that you skipped a line, or that you forgot. I was just in a play where I had to have a ring box in my pocket to propose.
Oh, right.
And
Little prop.
earlier in the play, we had done a scene where 3 princes propose at the same time. They all get down on their knees and propose
You
to
were
the
a
women
prince.
of choice.
Aw.
Well, I was a prince, but I was also an evil father who proposes to his daughter. It was real creepy.
Yeah, fucking
Real-
Shakespeare for you.
Well, it
It's
was
a
not
great tragedy.
It actually wasn't Shakespeare. It was the Brothers Grimm. Brothers Grimm fairy tales. Really,
gosh, yeah.
really fucked up stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna take that off the shelf. My kids don't. I have that book. They're not reading it now.
But earlier in the play, when the 3 princes propose, they use it. They just mime it. They don't have ring boxes. But whenever I'm proposing later, I have a real ring box, and I forgot it. And so in the moment, I fake it. I do the mime ring box, and I go off stage, and I'm like, oh, they knew it. They knew that I fucked up, and someone had to come up to me and tell me, hey, they don't know that you had a ring box. They saw the fake ring box, the mimed ring boxes earlier. They might just think that that's how we do it in the play. I was like, oh, you're right. I'm just stressing over nothing. And that kind of post mistake stress is really what fucks you up later. You know,
Yeah.
It's I did a play one time, Wizard of Oz, when I was very young. First play I did in Tulsa, and in it I played a bridge troll in a really weird version of Wizard of Oz, where
I don't remember the bridge troll version.
yeah, it's a weird version that not only is that
Who
but
did the
it's
punch up on that one? You know what Wizard of Oz needs? Bridge troll.
trolls. Well, that's not even the craziest part. At the end, instead of a hot air balloon, it's a rocket ship. The Wizard of Oz is like, oh, the way to get back to the real world is get on this fucking rocket ship and
Now don't click your heels. We've got liquid nitrogen and oxygen for
exactly.
rocket fuel.
Exactly.
No. The ruby slippers are fine. Don't scuff them. We'll get you home. I promise. It's like, what the hell?
So as the bridge troll, I had to spin a bridge around. Dorothy would get on one side of the bridge to go across the other, and I'd turn the
hell
bridge
of a
around.
prop.
Well, oh yeah, it's a bridge on wheels, which is banana. It's an old Scooby-Doo gag. Scooby-Doo used to have a gag like that, where you get on one side of the bridge, they turn the bridge around, you go off the other side, and you're like, hold on, like Scoob, I've seen this tree before.
That's an impression. That's a quality A-list impression there. I didn't even tell you guys you were going to get that. That's bonus. That's bonus material for the live audience.
If you can do a Casey Kasem, it's real easy to do a Shaggy.
Because Shaggy was case vet. You live theater, don't you? Do you live this life of writing and acting and performing and teaching? I mean,
Yes.
it's all, that's your schedule. Do you find time to nerd out on anything?
Well,
Do you like movies or board or digital video games? Or I mean, is there anything that you can like unplug from theater and get into that just completely just, this is my spot?
I'll tell you what my biggest nerd obsession is, which is horror movies. I absolutely
Like old Hammer films or like new stuff?
I prefer like 1980s slasher films, things like Halloween. Well, that's 79, but
Yeah, the Friday the 13th
Friday-
series, the
Friday-
Nightmare on Elm Street series.
I can literally talk for hours about Friday the 13th.
Really?
It's so fucking bananas as a series. There's 13 Friday the 13th films.
All right.
There are 13 of them.
And they didn't even worry about congruency
Oh
in
no,
those
not at all.
movies. Or,
There's one of them that doesn't even have Jason with the hockey mask in it. You know, there's one where Jason isn't in. He dies in the movie before it, which I think is the third. He dies in the third movie.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
finally-
because they put an axe in his neck in the third movie, and they're like, oh, thank God he's dead. And then in the next movie, someone starts killing people, and like, Jason's back, and then it turns out to just be some random guy.
Did you ever get, because I grew up in that genre,
Yeah.
in that time period, when if someone was killed, it was the brightest red, you know,
Yeah.
stage blood was like,
Oh, yeah.
it wasn't even close to similar.
Yeah.
It's like, and the, you know, like the gunshots, there would just be like these
The
massive.
Sam Peckinpah big
Yeah.
explosion, the wild bunch.
Sam Peckinpah.
Oh,
Salad days.
I fucking love Peckinpah. I went and saw the Wild Bunch at Circle Cinema on the big screen for the first time, and it was fucking transcendent an experience, because the way that he edits his like montages where it's like Ernest Borgnine shooting this like pump action shotgun, and it's these quick shots of these like Mexican soldiers just like flying through the air. It's outstanding.
Have you got to work in the director's chair?
Um,
Have you got to do? Do you enjoy being the guy on stage, the focus, or would you like to actually plan these things out, write them, and be that guy?
I actually want to be, but I'm a theater guy, and I am a comedian and an actor. But the thing that I want to do more than anything is write and direct movies. That's
Okay.
that's like the big goal. And I think that theater and comedy are, I don't want to say that they're not something that I will do later in my life, but it's almost like a training ground for
Sure.
when I go on to do like direct movies.
Yeah.
One of the things that Quentin Tarantino said in an interview that I really connected with is he said that as a director, he didn't know very much about cameras. He didn't know very much about. He wasn't
I
a
know-
classically trained writer,
yes.
but he knows how to talk to actors. And if you know how to talk to actors, then you can really get a long way in terms of directing, because like half of directing is dealing with actors, you know.
Right.
And if you can get that good performance out of them, if you can get someone like Tim Roth, who I think is a so-so actor at best, to give these wonderful performances, like Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, I think his performances in those movies are excellent, and I think that's almost all coming from Tarantino, kind of pushing him to do
So what you're
unusual
saying,
stuff.
to paraphrase, anybody can learn the technical aspects of being a director.
Oh, God.
But as
That's-
far as communicating with people, that's a gift rather than an ability.
It's, I mean, to a certain extent, yes, that's what I'm saying.
Okay. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm just trying to. Well, I mean, honestly, anybody can learn distance from camera to subject.
Right.
Anyone can learn lighting. These are like finite, formulaic sort
Right.
of situations. But how to communicate with someone who obviously is making big money to be there and doesn't
Right.
have to listen to you at all,
Exactly.
and still gets their
Exactly.
check. Like, to get the most out of that person who's already got their deal in their back pocket, it's like,
Right, yeah.
Jesus, how do you get that guy to perform? It's
Um,
like a coach for a football team.
One of my favorite directors. I'll say one of my favorite movies is Punch Drunk Love. Have you seen this movie?
Yes.
Adam Sandler is in it, and I don't like Adam Sandler. I want to go on record saying that I'm not a fan of Adam Sandler.
As an actor or just at all?
I didn't like his SNL stuff. I don't like his movies very much. I think as a person, he seems like a cool guy. He seems like
Yeah.
a funny guy.
I think he's a guy that honestly doesn't understand why people think he's funny.
Right.
And that's a beautiful thing almost.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
he kind of transcends that stardom into just
Yeah.
being a regular guy.
Well, as
you
long
know?
as people are paying me and they think I'm funny, I'm gonna keep doing it. But he
Right.
doesn't seem like assured of himself, like
he-
Jerry Seinfeld is like, I know I'm funny. You know that guy?
Yeah. I have my issues with Jerry Seinfeld too. Jerry Seinfeld's the exact opposite of the spectrum, like you're saying.
Yeah.
All Adam Sandler movies remind me of like just a group of guys getting together to hang out, which on a certain level I'm like, that's admirable, because
Well, they're all buddy films.
yeah, they're all films where it's like him and all of his friends just hanging out together on set doing things that are just ridiculous.
But sometimes you get a good movie from him that doesn't have him in it at all, like Grandma's Boy.
Right, well, I haven't seen that one.
That's a Happy Madison production.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
That's good. But in Punch Drunk Love, he plays a sad, depressed, angry guy, and it's not a part that I've ever thought of Adam Sandler being able to play.
Did
and
you see him in Spanglish?
No, I didn't see
Taya Leone?
Spanglish.
Where they're like a couple on the rocks, and he's wealthy, and he's actually
golly.
kind of sleeping with he's flirting with the Mexican house lady. It's not Sandler. It's not
This
a Sandler.
is already more complicated than any Adam Sandler movie I've ever
yes,
seen.
it's brutal. It really
Right.
it's one of those movies like, please don't go in there in the same room with her when your wife's not around. This is going to look bad for you. Oh, this is uncomfortable. Oh God,
Right.
I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I feel like I got to make an alibi for that guy. Oh God,
Right.
no.
I have to say something.
Sad, depressed, angry. He played my life. Thank you, Wasteland Warrior. No.
But just to see directors taking actors who are not taking them out of their comfort zone is something that I really like. There was and I obsess about movies. I obsess not just about horror movies, but about like action films. Like my two favorite films of all time are Hard Boiled, which is a John Woo Hong Kong film,
Okay.
and Die Hard, which is the greatest film of all time, in my opinion. I think there's
When you have that many people compare their movies to your movie,
to Die Hard, it's crazy. And
hey,
it's-
we've got this movie, Speed. Really, what is it? It's Die,
Die
Hard
Hard
on a bus.
bus.
It's like, well, okay.
the thing. Okay, Speed is another movie that I like, but I
Yeah.
don't like. It's not Die Hard, and the reason it's not Die Hard
Nothing's
is
Die Hard.
Die Hard. The thing that makes Die Hard is Bruce Willis in that movie. Bruce Willis is funny. He's charming. He's charismatic.
He's the reluctant hero. He
Exactly,
doesn't want to be there.
exactly,
He's the
exactly.
reluctant hero, and it's
Mhm.
beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
It's almost like I'd really compare it to Dirty Harry, because in Dirty Harry, Clint Eastwood's playing the badass cop who doesn't want to, he wants to save, he wants to get the bad guy, he wants to save the girl, but he doesn't want to, he doesn't want to deal with the bullshit, right? And Bruce Willis is kind of almost taking that and playing it for laughs, which I kind of like that,
He takes it a little less seriously.
it's less seriously, and it's less Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
It's less angry face.
Wasteland Warrior, I cannot wait to ask him this question. This is a gorgeous question, beautifully written.
Oh, golly.
How hard would it be to work with an actor that you hate as a person but believe they are perfect for the film or role?
I've been in this situation before where I've
No
seen.
names.
I won't use any names, but I've been.
It's a small community, Quinn.
I've gone to an audition before,
Right.
where I'm in the room waiting to do the audition,
Okay.
and someone walks in, and I'm like, oh, I fucking hate them. There is no one in the world that I less want to talk to or see. But then in the back of my mind, I'm like, they're great for this.
Yeah,
They're
right.
perfect for this role, And I God bless the people who do community theater in Tulsa, because community theater in Tulsa is so toxic right now. There are so many toxic.
Are you talking like Spotlight?
Spotlight. Oh, okay. Spotlight exists separately, I think, of a lot of the.
Are you connected with anybody at Spotlight? Do you know Greg and Christina?
I don't.
Okay.
I'm not super connected with Spotlight. The two theater companies that I'm really connected to are Clark Theater and Heller Theater.
Okay.
I've done a few Theater Tulsa shows before. I've auditioned for a couple of American Theater Company shows.
So when you say community theater, you're talking about a different community than I'm aware,
I'm
aware of.
all of the theaters together, except for Spotlight. Spotlight's done a good job of staying out of the politics, the bullshit around.
They have
it.
their own thing. They have to keep that production going because that's their claim to fame.
Yeah, exactly.
Like we don't have a choice. We have to do this
And
every Saturday.
I hadn't seen it until recently. I went and saw it. It's so fucking funny.
Oh yeah.
It's so good.
There's been some leading lights in the Tulsa comedy scene
Yeah.
that have done roles in
Yeah, it's a fantastic show, and I didn't think that I would like it going into it. Just because it kind of it's an old play, it's an antiquated idea. It's about not drinking.
What about the murder mystery dinner theater kind of stuff? Do you like that genre? Or
I
is
like
it-
that genre, but okay, and Landry Miller can tell you more about it because he used to write for murder mystery dinner theater
I can't get
stuff.
Landry on here except once in a bit. He is a busy.
Yeah, he's a busy guy, but
Yeah.
me and him have had multiple long conversations about murder mystery dinner theater, and about how I think that a murder mystery dinner theater should be up in your face. It should, you should have people dying, blood all over you, like on the table where people are eating, and just because I think that's so much funnier of an idea. If the murder mystery is happening literally, like if someone falls dead in your bowl of soup, I think that's so
Or-
much funnier than to see it like off in the corner.
Someone orders the tomato soup. You bring out an empty bowl,
Right.
And then the slasher happens,
Yeah.
and instead of
Bleeds.
using fake blood, you use tomato soup, and you fill their
bleeds
bowl.
tomato soup into the bowl.
Yeah, why not? Make it part of the. You didn't finish answering the question.
Oh yes, I did. Okay, this is gonna happen
I'm
a lot.
sorry.
I forget to answer questions
Okay.
a lot, but
Keep him on track, Wasteland.
dealing with actors who are not necessarily good people but are good for the role is all about diplomacy, and it's really about if there's an actor that's doing something that you like,
Okay.
you have to make sure that you compliment that, right? Because
Right.
difficult actors love to be complimented. If you
Yeah.
compliment what they're doing correctly, then they're more open to suggestions of other things. You
And
know,
then they also might work hard to get another compliment. I mean, for
right?
lack of
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
I got you.
And no actor wants to go out there on stage and do something silly. You know, actors may say that they want to do silly stuff on stage, but what they really what they want to do is they want to go out and get laughs. They want to go out and get laughs. They want to get applause. They want to do all this stuff. But no one wants to go out there on stage, do a bit, and then no one laughs, because that's the worst feeling in the whole wide world. And so if you can use that idea to your advantage in terms of propelling that actor in a direction that you want, you know, that's all you really have to do. You have to make sure you're like, oh, this is silly, but in the long run, it's going to work out, you know? It might feel silly in rehearsal, but it's going to work out.
There's a growing trend right now about 80s films, bringing
Yeah.
them back, reboots, you know,
Right.
Ghostbusters, and what else? What else have they pulled lately?
The Stranger Things, which is
Running Man.
every 80s and oh yeah,
Like they brought back Running Man, which was an Arnold Schwarzenegger classic. It was cheesy as can be until you put,
Oh, yeah.
you know, you modernize it and you try to make it look more real and dark
based
and
on a
grungy.
Stephen King book, which blows my fucking mind. But
Could
Stephen King
you-
wrote that.
Could you have? Oh, dude. Could you have? Could you reboot '80s horror movies, but not update them and make them more real and more dark, and try to add that kind of sense of realism, but just remake them even maybe a little bit more exaggerated towards the goofy side?
Well, there's a couple movies that I really like that have come out recently that have kind of done the 80s horror movie. There's a movie called The Void, which is a really, really expertly done movie. It's on Netflix. I would highly recommend that people watch this movie. The whole point is that it's all practical effects, right? And it's about this kind of Lovecraftian monster that starts to take over this abandoned hospital. There's a series of monsters. And at one point, they go into the basement. And in the basement, they light a road flare. And they're surrounded by monsters,
Right.
which is such a kind of a goofy idea. You know, you walk into a dark room, you light a match, and you're surrounded by monsters. You know, it's almost like a comedy joke, but they play it so they play it seriously.
You could do horror comedy. I think Beetlejuice is massively
Oh.
underrated for that.
Beetlejuice is great. Tim Burton in general, I think, has a really good grasp of comedy.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think he's good at comedy. I think more so than his horror stuff, because none of his movies really scare me,
No,
but all of his movies make me laugh.
you can prove he has a sense of humor. I mean,
Oh,
how
yeah.
many people write that many parts for Deb?
Oh yeah.
You'd have to have a.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see.
On the topic of horror comedy,
Okay.
one of my favorite movies of all time is Evil Dead 2, which is hilarious. Bruce Campbell is, I think, one of the best actors in the whole
Army
wide
of
world.
Darkness.
Army of Darkness. I have an Army of
Yes.
Darkness poster in
Oh,
my
dude.
room.
Shop smart. Shop S
S-Smart, yeah.
Yes.
You know, and you juxtapose that with skeletons with swords,
Oh,
you know, murdering people. You
That
know,
was
it's great.
such a good movie.
hmm
First you want to kiss me, then you want to kill me. Blow. Like it's just it wasn't even like a big build up to a funny line. It was
Right.
like, I'm gonna give you the premise, the setup, and the punchline in 7 words.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, wow,
Oh,
that
yeah.
can be done. You can do that in film. Let's see. Have you ever worked on a production that you didn't like, but it turned out to be great?
Yes, multiple times. I've also worked on productions that I really liked and then turned out to be very bad, and it's very different experiences. I worked on a production that I was very nervous about, simply because it was a production that dealt with topics that I feel like sometimes people don't want to talk about, you know, and you know, as we're going through the process of rehearsing the play, in the back of my mind, I'm just like, is this gonna work? Is this gonna work? I don't know if this is going to work. And some of the actors had trouble memorizing their lines. There was problems with the set. But in the end, it turned out to be one of the best shows I've ever done.
I've got 2 follow-up questions.
Yeah.
Number one, can one bad actor in the cast ruin a cast? That would be the first thing that comes to mind about what you're talking about. And
I'll name names on this. I will name names on this.
Wow.
I was in a production of Catch Me If You Can with an actor named Andrew Seeley, who is, as far as I knew him, was a very funny guy and a very funny actor. And Catch Me If You Can. Have you seen the movie?
Yes.
It's the Leonardo DiCaprio gallivants around the world. Tom Hanks chases him.
Yeah.
I was playing the Tom Hanks role, and this guy Andrew was playing the Leonardo DiCaprio role. And Andrew is a very funny guy, very funny. Throughout the whole process of doing the play, he would make me laugh constantly. But he was not right for that role. He wasn't good at playing that sexually or very promiscuous Leonardo DiCaprio type.
Okay.
And there's a lot of scenes where he has to flirt with ladies and
Yes.
stuff like that, and it never came across as genuine, just because it always seemed like he was playing it for laughs rather than for serious. And that's not because, and I will say also, later on, we did a production of Our Town in which he played the Milkman, and he fucking killed it in that role.
Right.
As the Milkman, every time he'd walk on stage, he was pulling this invisible cow, and he was just so fucking funny. He'd pull the cow on, he'd be like, "It's me, Howie the Milkman." It was so funny.
All right. Let's see. If they bring back Princess Bride, I will kill people, and you're allowed. If they reboot Princess Bride, everyone is allowed to take out at least one person who is associated with the production of that movie. One murder each. That's all we get, but we're going to use it up. We're going to use our does it hurt in writing a play if when you get to it, because this kills comedians when they're writing material and they're like, when I get to this point, the audience is going to laugh, and then when you get up on stage, if the audience doesn't laugh, it kind of throws you. Does it hurt in writing a play, predetermining what the audience's response is going to be at certain times in that play? Like, they'll be in tears by the time we get to this, and then something happens, you're like, they were laughing their ass off. Does it hurt to...
It can. I wrote a series of plays last year, or 2 years ago, called Jack Dickey and the Swarthy Gentleman, which is kind of a 1930s noir about an old detective who's trying to find a wanted criminal.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a comedy, but I also had this kind of underlying romance that I wrote into it, where he's fallen in love with this former flapper turned murderer who is just trying to deal with her feelings. And there's a part where they have they're in a gunfight or something, and then they have this kind of moment of quiet where they get to actually talk one-on-one really for the first time in the whole since they've met, and really just kind of open up to one another. And I wrote all these very sincere lines of dialogue, and they all got laughs. Simply because it's...
The delivery?
Well, the delivery was excellent. The actors who were in the show were excellent, but they all got laughs simply because it's in the midst of this ridiculous environment. It's a cartoon basically what I was writing. People were getting shot and falling off buildings. Buildings were exploding. And then they're just like, hey, by the way, my dad beat me with a belt. And, just like that. It's that juxtaposition of the ridiculous with the incredibly serious that makes people laugh. It's an uncomfortable reaction, Laughter, I've heard, is like a reaction to misunderstanding something, to confusion. If something confuses you, you either get angry or you laugh. And it's better to laugh, I think.
Do you set goals for yourself?
Generally, yeah. In terms of writing,
in life, I mean, where would you have to be? What line would you have to cross for you to think I've made it? Like what would have to happen? What? How would the stars have to align before you go? All that hard work has paid off. I'm there.
Well, I've always been really nervous about setting goals like that, just because. Stephen Colbert was on Conan O'Brien's podcast, and he said something very telling, where he was basically saying that when he got rejected, he
was Second City, right?
Well, yeah, but he sent in a packet to Conan O'Brien's late night show, and got rejected, and he said that if he hadn't been rejected, he never would have gotten to where he was today, because he went on to do Dana Carvey's show, and then from there he went to The Daily Show, and all that stuff, Colbert Report. But at the time, Conan O'Brien's late night show was the peak, where he wanted to be, So I always feel nervous about putting goals like that, because I don't want to stop myself from taking the spontaneous opportunities. Like, there's a few places that I could go from Tulsa. Like, I could go to Chicago and do improv there. I could go to LA and do screenwriting there. I probably won't make it either of those places.
Let me ask you this, though. Would it be that you performed in a production, or would it be that you wrote and directed a production?
Well,
you know what I mean. Like where they say a prophet's not accepted in his own hometown, because everybody. They said Jesus wasn't accepted in Galilee because everybody knew that he was. Oh, that's just the carpenter's son. He's no Messiah.
Right.
So I'm wondering, would you feel like you've made it if one of your shows were on a week run at the Brady? You know what I mean? Like,
I feel like. For a playwright, one of the biggest, highest honors is Broadway, or an off-Broadway show.
Yeah.
Stuff
York.
like that. New York is big, but I'd be totally fine if, the city of Seattle, put on one of my shows. I'd feel totally vindicated by that. I'd be like, I did a show outside of Tulsa. That's all that matters.
What if you left Tulsa? You go to. Let's make somewhere popular, but not super popular. Not like LA, but like
Austin.
Okay, Austin. Let's say you go to Austin, Texas, and while you're there, you do a couple of workshops, and somebody brings in a script like that, and it's something you've written. That it's a high school production.
Yeah.
It didn't make it to Broadway, but it's something. It's a beloved high school play that people love to see. It's Death of a Salesman, or something.
I'd feel pretty good about that. There's this fella who I personally don't like his plays, but he is super popular, and his name is Don Zolaitis. And here's the thing: he works. He's a working playwright, and his stuff is beloved by high schoolers, middle schoolers. He writes all of these series of sketch plays, as well as he writes mostly comedic stuff. A lot of stuff that gets put into speech and debate. And as much as he doesn't appeal to me personally, I have a lot of respect for anyone who works that hard and writes that much stuff, because it's difficult. It's so difficult to sit down and write anything at all, whether it's like a term paper or a goddamn play.
It's hard to get out and write 10 minutes.
Exactly.
A lot of comedians are like, hey, I've got my set list here, and it's like 6 premises, and it's like, if you wrote that out word for word, you know how long that would take you?
It's like less than a minute.
Seriously, like all your jokes, to write them out word for word, it takes time.
Right. Yeah.
To write the entirety of everything, it's like, and to find time to actually force yourself to, like, that guy must be very disciplined.
Oh yeah, no, he's super disciplined
and unmarried, no kids.
Well, he actually has kids. He posted a really funny story that my dad told me about how his daughter is in high school, and his daughter auditioned for the school play and got a lead role in it, and then it turned out it was one of his plays.
Oh wow!
And and how weird and transcendent that moment is. Like if I had a moment like that, I'd love something like that, where suddenly you realize, whoa, my stuff might be bigger than people in Tulsa will sometimes come up to me on the street and be like, hey, you're that guy from Talk Show, and I'm like, you saw that? You saw Talk Show? And because Talk Show, at least in the beginning, was kind of just something that we did on the weekends. It was a show.
It's a good room, though.
It's a very good room. And the fans for talk show are insatiable. They always want more stuff. You know.
Yeah.
Jeff Thomas, who is a person who I just love, absolutely can't get enough of my character Baby with a Knife.
I love Baby with a Knife.
He'll come up to me constantly and be like, "Oh man, yeah, do Baby with a Knife, do Baby with a Knife," and I'm like, "Absolutely, Jeff. I'll do anything for you, Jeff."
That, you know, I loved. For those of you who don't know, this last Sunday, Talk Show Inc. celebrated 1 year.
1 year, yeah.
30 plus episodes.
Yeah.
And
not including the podcast, which has been going on now for I think 4 years.
Ton of nods to the first show on Sunday night. Baby with a Knife.
Baby with a Knife was there.
I mean, everything I was like, wow, they're really revisiting. Because I talked to Landry beforehand. I was like, do you remember the old flashback shows they used to do on sitcoms, where it'd give them an extra episode every year because everybody's already on vacation? Hey guys, come in here. Let's shoot probably
10 minutes of material.
Yeah, 10 minutes of dialogue, and then you guys go home for the summer, and we're just going to clip and edit all your best moments from the year.
You remember that time that?
So I told Wayne.
Yeah.
So I told Wayne, I was like, do you know what'd be good for your first episode back is to literally do the same bits again.
But we basically did that on
but then you guys did that, and I was like, because Landry was like, that's a great idea, and then he went off and did it, and I'm like, asshole, you could have just told me that's what we were doing tonight.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I love are characters, playing characters, funny characters, weird characters. I love stuff like that because, you know, I like it more than topical humor, because topical humor is dead within an hour. You know? But characters like Baby with a Knife, characters like Ween, who is just absolutely outrageous weird guy, a monster, the detective, characters like that who can come back again and again and do different scenarios, will never die. Someone's got to go fast.
It was a boat. If you haven't noticed, there's a river behind us. That was a boat.
A boat. We're driving down the river there.
It's been dark for hours. I need to have like where it actually cycle. Like, gosh, it's like 3 p.m. on the West Coast. It's dark as crap in Tulsa right now. Yeah, we're not good on special effects around here.
Oh, this is foreign. I used to do a show for Channel 4.5 that was that I'd film in my backyard. So this is the most production value I've ever seen.
Mr. Blakely, pardon my ignorance, but who/what is on your T-shirt? I feel like I should know. Thank you so much. Is that a Hebrew letter like stata or something?
Oh, this is Puddle's Pity Party.
That's a P.
It's a P. It's Puddle's Pity Party, who is he's a performer. He was on America's Got Talent, and he has one of the best bits I've ever seen, which is that he's like 10 feet tall. He's a really tall, kind of big, bald guy who dresses up in clown makeup, and he goes on stage, says nothing, and then he grabs a microphone and music starts, and he sings like a fucking angel. It's amazing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Because the expression on his face is much like the late night clown that Letterman used to have on that would just come out smoking a cigarette going, yeah, whatever.
Well, he's a sad clown. He's a Pagliacci, in the style of like old Commedia dell'arte, the sad clown.
Yeah.
And he's
very French.
And he's called Puddle's Pity Party, and he sings all these beautiful kind of upbeat songs in a very sad way.
Oh, Wasteland Warrior says he has an amazing voice.
Yeah, his voice is outstanding.
Have you ever played or written about a character that you really didn't like?
Yes, I have.
Thank you, Warrior.
Characters that you don't like are... It's easy to write just kind of stuff for characters you don't like, but it's really hard to get characters you don't like to be likable, because one of the characters I had to write was this bad guy who was a veteran of the Great War, and he wanted to and he was also a Nazi, because he is disillusioned by World War I. He leaned towards this kind of alt-right Nazi or not alt-right, but right-wing Nazi movement.
Okay, so basically he's not saying what you think he just said.
I've
which
really
is all
shown
Trump,
my hand.
which all
my
Trump supporters
political...
are Nazis. He didn't say that.
God.
That's what he meant. But he didn't say that. He's not trying to alienate anyone.
I didn't mean that. But who leaned towards the right-wing Nazi movement, and then comes back to America and has this evil plan to destroy the world. Which is very cartoonish villain. But I had to write him in such a way where he was really compelling, because a good bad guy has to have something that you like about them. Die Hard has Hans Gruber, who is just a reprehensible bad guy, but he's so suave
and he's
so clever, overplays the crap out of it.
Typical
It's the
English
same
baddie.
with like a character like Thanos.
Can you believe that was Rickman's first film?
Was that his first film?
He had done theater,
Oh,
but his first film was Die Hard. He was in his
Really?
40s. Yes,
That's bananas,
dude. He was amazing. Yes,
Man, well, he did good.
Let's
But
see.
writing for bad guys and writing for characters you don't like is difficult. But as long as you treat them like people, that's the important thing. Treat them like real people, then you'll be fine.
That's from the
Stuff like
writing
that.
side. In Wasteland Warrior, I'll get back to your questions in just a second.
Yeah.
But that's from the writing side.
Yeah.
As far as acting, like I remember when I was a kid, like 1970 something. I remember watching the first Inglourious Bastards with Bo Svensson and Fred. Who was the guy that played Shaft? Fred. Oh gosh. Anyway, I remember seeing that.
I think Shaft was played by Richard Roundtree.
Was it? Okay. So the premise of the movie doesn't matter. The point of the movie was you have some Americans who are going back behind enemy lines, and of course you have the Nazis because it's World War II. That's the breakdown of the movie. You got good guys, you got bad guys. And I remember telling my dad, and it might be one of the most profound things I've ever heard him say, but I remember going, I don't like that guy. And my dad's like, why? And I was like, because he's a Nazi. He's like, if you hate that guy, that just shows you how good an actor he is for you to actually feel like you don't like him.
Yeah.
And I always, what is that? But I guess being a comedian, I look at it the other way. It's easier to get people to hate you doing stand-up comedy than it is to get them to laugh. It really is.
That's true.
You can always say the wrong thing on stage, but to
Yeah.
make those people feel like, to make the people in the audience feel like you are part of the same tribe as them, you are from the same cloth, and to relate to you is harder than to get them to hate you. So, but in acting, it seems to be quite the opposite. It seems like it's harder to get people to
hate you than it is to get people to like you.
Like people always give you the benefit of the doubt as an actor,
Right.
that's just a role he's playing.
When-
But in
when
comedy,
people
they're
go
like,
to
no,
see-
that's him.
When people go to see theater, they want to root for you. They want you to succeed. They want actors to succeed and be funny because that's why they're doing it. They want them to be good. I had to play an abusive dad in a show, and I had a scene where I have to, for lack of a better term, beat the shit out of my daughter. Like slap her, throw her on the ground.
You do the hand behind the... Or you have
actually, we did it where I was actually hitting her face, not hard,
Right.
But where I'd come real close and then I'd stop it at the last
in the
minute and just
background
kind
doing
of
sound effect?
yeah, something like that. But every night when we did it in rehearsal, it felt really weird. I felt terrible. The first night I go out on stage and we do it in front of an audience, I come off stage and I'm like, I feel great. I feel great because when
Can I hit you again?
When you're feeding off that audience's energy, when you feel the audience start to be like, oh no, and they start to react, you can take that energy and pump it into your veins like fucking heroin and utilize it as fuel,
Have you ever felt that you failed in describing or making a character likable?
Yeah. I wrote a play one time about a breakup that I had, and in the play, the lead character was a version of me, who tells all these stories about how he was slighted by his ex-girlfriend, and then when I was and was very mad and gets angry and cries a lot, and then at the end of it, when I presented this play to my friend Jack Allen, Jack Allen read the play and was like, this lead character is a piece of shit. He's so whiny and angry, and I'm like, that's me. What are you doing? You're supposed to be on his side. And he's like, I can't be. He's just so whiny and angry. there's nothing to like here. There's no positives, right? It's really easy, especially when you're writing about something that's really close to you, to not be able to step back and be like, how would the audience view this? So, I mean, to have that, which is why I write a lot of stuff that's kind of almost cartoonish and outrageous and very genre heavy.
It's kind of the very much the Jim Carrey school of acting, where it's not about acting the role, it's about how far over the top can you make this guy.
Yeah.
Like the detective. Mm-hmm. The detective is like, you could underplay that a little bit and still get the same effect.
Right.
But
when I go out there with a baseball bat and I pointed it at people and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing?
You know, there's a little bit of guerrilla theater going on at the Nightingale.
Oh, yeah.
Where you just got Ethan Sandoval walking around with a ball bat going, I need a volunteer! Bam! Bam!
Yeah.
Like, oh, Jesus, all right, I'll take it.
It's like the gladiatorial combat almost is how I like to describe some of our talk shows, because we just kind of go out there. Sometimes we don't even write scripts. Sometimes we'll just come up with the premises and we'll be like, all right, this is the premise. As long as we commit to that premise, then it should be good.
So you're doing the Christopher Guest outline of a scene.
Yeah, exactly. It's very, we do a lot of outlines of scenes, and then we go out there and we just kind of...
Really?
Yeah, we just kind of work it out in front of the audience, you know? Which is sometimes good and sometimes bad. There's some bits that and a lot of the scripted bits, I think, the scripted bits are more 50-50 than the outline bits. Because the outline bits, if it's not going well, if the audience isn't liking it, we cut that shit short immediately. But with a scripted bit, you gotta go do it to the very end, you know?
All right. First of all, let me just thank you for being here. You've been a treat.
Absolutely.
I was so honored to have you here.
I literally do this anytime you want me back.
We have a way of rounding out the show.
Yeah.
Generally, people talk about food. I can't believe there wasn't one fucking food question in here this time, because you guys love food porn. I don't know. Like, every time it always... Like, oh, what's he do? He's an actor? All right, let me ask him an acting question. All right, let me ask him a writing question. And then out of nowhere, hey, what's he like for Thanksgiving dinner? It's like, what? So, we don't... Oh, wait, there's one more. Are there any overseas theaters that you would consider... yeah, we'll keep going. This is the last question, then we're moving. We're good. Because I've already thanked him. You're killing my content. I'm going to have to edit this and put what I've already said at the back of... Oh, Jesus. Okay. Have you ever choked on a... Wait, no. You guys are coming up with questions too quick. Are there any overseas theaters that you would consider that you'd made it off where you played? Wait. Oh,
like if I played in any like overseas theaters, are there any that I...
Would you... Let me take a little license with the question. Mm-hmm. The Globe.
Oh,
Would you... I did a show at the Globe. I mean, is that hanging your hat on and can retire on that?
Here's the thing that I kind of, when it comes to retirement, I don't think that I could ever really retire from performance or theater.
Well, if it's something you love, you're not really working anyway.
Exactly. But something like the Globe is a really good kind of feather to put in your hat. You know, the Globe or the West End, you know, anything, you know, there was a time when in order to be a good show, you'd have to play for the crowned heads of Europe. You know, right. You'd play for England and Italy and Europe and Russia and all these other royal families. And if you did stuff like that, there's things like the Royal Variety Show in England, which I would love to do something like that.
So your meccas for theater, New York. Mm-hmm.
West End. The West End.
What about West Coast? Do they have a mecca for theater?
Well, there's places like
or are they just
LA,
movies and comedy?
LA has some really good theater stuff there. For improv, there's Chicago and LA.
Oh, right.
Because there's like the Groundlings and
Second
City.
UCB.
UCB, yeah.
Yeah.
Upright Citizens Brigade is one that I'd really love to play.
All right, they're trying to mix in some of your occupation and food. Have you ever choked on a hot dog on stage? it's a little weird.
I actually don't eat hot dogs. I'm a pescatarian. I only eat fish. I don't eat any meat except for fish.
That's a thing?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
See, I want to do that. No. Because every time I'm like, I just want to eat fish, and they're like, well, you need to go vegetarian. Then you talk to a vegetarian, they're like, well, if you're vegetarian, we don't eat fish. It's like, well, there's got to be a way I can just eat fish.
Pescatarian.
All right, I'm on his team. We're going to go that route. What is your favorite food for sitting in the house yourself and on a first... Ooh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, basically, if you have the opportunity to cook or make food or buy yourself food,
right?
What do you buy yourself? And the follow-up question is, how would you treat yourself? And the follow-up would be, how would you like show off to your peacock plumage? What would you cook, or where would you take someone that you were trying to impress? So, two-part question: how do you treat you? How do you treat someone else?
Okay. For me, it doesn't take a lot to really impress me in terms of food.
I use it for sustenance only, probably.
One of my favorite foods, if I'm going to treat myself, I'm going to make 4 boxes of Kraft macaroni and cheese. All 4 boxes. And then get the biggest pot I can possibly find. Just make it full of mac and cheese, extra cream, extra butter. Just the whole 9 yards.
Bacon bits?
Oh no, not bacon bits.
Oh yeah, because you're pescatarian.
Pescatarian.
Breadcrumbs? Anything to add texture?
Breadcrumbs. Sometimes I'll make like a tuna noodle casserole where I put tuna and frozen peas in a casserole with onions on top. Stuff like that is delicious. But if I'm going to, mac and cheese is my favorite food, and when I'm trying to impress someone, what I'll do is I will make my mom's vegetarian lasagna.
Oh, I thought you were going to say deluxe mac and cheese.
Oh,
with
no.
the shells.
Not the deluxe mac and cheese. No. I break out the actual made-from-scratch lasagna.
A vegetarian one was eggplant?
It's what I usually do is I put spinach and I put peppers and then as much ricotta cheese as I can fit in that motherfucker.
Right.
Because I love cheese and I love pasta.
That got the appropriate response. My man... Mm-hmm. You're cooking for me, and yes, use the cream instead of milk, you rock.
Yeah.
See,
exactly.
It didn't take you guys much, did it?
Exactly.
One little thing about food, and everybody's on board now.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, who cares about that retarded guy who does theater? Let's talk about food! You guys are so predictable, I love it. Let's see. Okay, so we're closing out the show. Mm-hmm. Thank you guys so much for being here. There isn't going to be a stream after this interview. I'm going to a comedy show at the Wine Loft. The Wine Loft tonight. Dan Fritchie, Shauna Blake, Ryan Green, Rick Shaw. Loaded show. If you're in the Tulsa
Wonderful
area,
comics.
The show starts in about 30 minutes. You need to start heading south. This is how we wrap it up as an improv game. I used to be on a show called News Junkie, and it was a news panel show. We had a host, and then there were 6 comedians on there, and we just got to riff about the news.
Right, yeah.
Right, tell jokes and that kind of shit. But what we would do to kind of get the audience more involved is we would play this improv game where we'd drag someone from the audience on and give them a beer for their trouble. And as a comedian, give us comedians a chance to riff off of something. So we would basically guess the person's name, where they were from, and a secret that nobody knows about them. So in the same way, we've kind of twisted that to fit this show.
Okay.
So the question is, if you saw yourself for the first time cross the street, what do you think that guy's name is?
Oh, I don't know.
Just look at him. Look at him for a second and go, that's
Chuck, Charles, something like that,
Charles. Okay.
Mike.
Charles or Mike. Okay.
Yeah.
Where do you think Charles Mike's from?
Oh God. Oh man.
Take it all in, man. I mean, he's
probably
got a definite
from some kind of trailer park somewhere in the backwoods, A place where a nuclear power plant is definitely dumping stuff in the water.
So
that's
he's definitely no
from.
Charles. He's a Chuck.
He's a Chuck.
He's
Chuck. Chuck from the trailer park.
Chuck from the trailer park.
Oh, yeah.
Now this is the final question. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think is a secret that nobody knows about Chuck from the trailer park?
I bet in the darkest hours of the night, when no one's around, when no one's looking, he listens to Dane Cook.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, yeah, what a piece of garbage.
Oh, my God.
What a piece of garbage.
On what?
Oh, he's clearly
on a phonograph. I mean, Dane
Yeah.
Cook hasn't been famous for like 100 years.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell does
Oh,
he have?
yeah.
An old Victrola?
I bet he's listening to it on wax cylinders, Thomas Edison style, you know.
His mama was his sister.
Oh, for sure. That's that guy. Yeah.
Thank you, Wasteland Warrior, Mojo, and Kiki. Thank you, Hazy K. Thanks. Thank you, everybody who watched tonight. Like I said, we'll be back tomorrow night, 6 p.m. And if you missed it and you're just coming in late, this episode will premiere on the YouTube channel on Saturday. Go to the link right below the stream for the YouTube channel. Make sure your bell notification turned on. That's it for us. Quinn Blakely, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for
and
being
thank
here
you
too.
guys.
And we'll be back tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Central Time, midnight in the UK, 11 a.m. Auckland, New Zealand time. Bye-bye.